Good evening, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus. My name is Faraz Patel. We'd like to thank you, the viewer, for staying with us here on Hilaal TV, DSTV channel 347. Of course, as we enter towards Women's Day on Saturday, we are profiling various political parties and its female representatives. And joining me now for the first two segments, I'd like to welcome Nothando Shozi-Malanga, who is the convener of the MK Party's Women's League. She's the national convener, just to put it there. Nothando, good day. Thank you so much for joining us on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Yeah, no, it's an absolute pleasure. Nothando, like I've asked many of my previous guests this week, it's the year 2025. Where do you feel women are now in terms of the political spectrum within South Africa?
Well, I think we've made quite a significant progress in this country. Women are visible, and women are visible in politics, and they are active. But the truth for us is that we still remain excluded, from levels of power. Women are very key when it comes to mobilizing, and giving political parties, the numbers that they have. But you still find that women, especially political parties like ours, the MK Party, which is now the main opposition party in the country, but yet you still find that women are sidelined when it comes to positions of leadership, especially in these formations. And this is the contradiction that we are living with, unfortunately, as women, that we are present in numbers, but what you find is that we are absent when it comes to authority and in leadership positions and positions of power in the country.
Nothando, as we sit right now, women currently hold 46% of the seats in the National Assembly and 36% in the National Council of Provinces. Do you feel this is enough in terms of the overall representation, or has female representation exceeded expectations?
No, I don't think they have. 46% is quite good in Parliament, and what you will find is that the question would be, where are these women? 46% is good, but it's not about numbers. Where are women in terms of the positions that they have? Are women influencing budgets? Are women in national priorities making decisions? Are they in the legislature really making an impact? If the working class women issues aren't front and are not centered, then it's really not about women are there. Are they represented really? So it's not enough to say that until there is impact, and impact is matching those numbers and those statistics. It starts to make sense when women are just not counted, but they are really making an impact.
Nothando, it's interesting that you brought up, we say, of course, it's lovely to have the 46%, so the semantics are great in that regards. But if they're not going to be, for example, portfolio committee chairpersons, or if they're not going to be really making significant strides in decision making, especially when it comes to the various portfolios of the country, then we are really heading into a hole where there is no light at the end of it.
Well, I don't think so. I think the fact that the numbers are achieved is really good, But I think it's exactly what I'm talking about. The fact that, because what I've noticed, the other thing, is that there's a tendency, because the system was not really made for us as women. It was not designed for us. So it cannot work for us if it was not designed for us. So the focus all the time has always been about achieving certain targets and achieving certain numbers. And men are still at the forefront, and they're making these decisions. And at times, what I notice is the fact that they sometimes choose the worst of us. you know, and it puts us back, you know. So it's not about numbers. Choose the best women that have got a vision, that have got strategies, a right woman for the right position. Then we can make a greater impact that we need to make. So those numbers really don't matter at the end of the day. You know, they're really good for ensuring that we are there, but we need women that can make a real impact, and there is plenty of them out there.
Nothando, you're speaking about women to make a real impact, and you spoke about obviously the system, which becomes a challenge for women. And that brings in the next question. When a woman wants to enter politics, it's a field which is hostile, it's challenging, it takes a lot out of somebody. From your perspective, what do you feel are some of the main challenges facing women if they want to enter the political field?
Well, the truth is patriarchy is still very much alive. Patriarchy is alive in South Africa. Whether it's old or it's new, it is there. And economically, women often don't have access to the same campaign funding and resources, you know. And so that really puts us at the back. And there's also issues of gatekeeping, whether gatekeeping mainly by elites, whether it is women or men that are doing it, but it's still there. And it's putting a challenge where young women cannot really take the forefront and really come forward and lead and come with new and fresh ideas for us to really be taken forward as women. So there's all those challenges in the political space. And we feel as women, especially in South Africa, that we are still not safe emotionally and psychologically in this country.
And of course, we are going to be touching on gender-based violence after the break. But just before we go to it, Nothando, when you look at, let's take South Africa, for example. I mean, we've only got Patricia de Lille, who is the leader of a political party. The rest of them, of course, are occupied by men. When you look globally, it's very similar. You don't see a woman taking up a larger space in a respective nation. I want to get your take on why women still remain underrepresented in high-level political positions from a global perspective.
Well, the thing is, from days immemorial, it has always been like that, you know. And when you look at the systems that were put in place, the Western system, for instance, does not encourage women empowerment. It's just a term, you know. But when you look at us really changing the system, and that's why the MK party is always advocating for changes in our constitution.
Sure.
It's because these things are not designed for us. When you look at our indigenous systems, you find that women held a very special role in society, in communities, in our homes. And as long as we are utilizing a system that was not designed for us, we will never find the solutions that we are actually looking for. And I think it's time that we take that seriously and understand that there is a need for change and really a real change that will impact people in a positive way. Change that relates to us and change that is not foreign. We need to go back to our indigenous ways because then whatever change we come back with, it will be change that we can associate with, we identify with, and we believe.
You know, Nothando, just to add on to that, and we've got about 2 minutes, you know, you mentioned something quite important. When you look at the indigenous, especially when we look at how Africa was, the mother, the woman played such a huge role. And I think that's what sometimes a lot of us as males take for granted. And I think it's time for all of us to catch a wake up and understand that a woman is not just a woman, she's a mother and she's a leader also. And I think that's important, isn't it?
It's very, very important. I mean, in African, like even in Islam,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
your actions, you know, have got to be godly. And in the African spiritual space, your connection with your ancestors is quite critical. You know, it connects to your generations to come and those who came before you. once we take those values, that culture, and really engage that and ensure that policies, speak to that, they speak to us, who we are, then we can be able to really have a meaningful change that we can look at and say, this is us. At the moment, we are using a foreign system, and we are hoping that it will serve us. And that's where the problem is. Mothers have always been critical in our cultures, and we need to really put mothers at the center and the front so that we can be able to realize the change that they are the ones that give birth to a nation.
After the break, I continue my conversation with Nothando Shozi-Malanga. We're, of course, talking women in politics. Do stay tuned. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to News in Focus. I'm still in conversation with Nothando Shozi-Malanga. She is the national convener of the MK Party Women's League. Nothando, again, thank you so much for staying with us. I want to speak on gender-based violence. Now, obviously, when we talk of this month, it would be ignorant of all of us to skip the discussion of gender-based violence. It's still a pandemic. It's still a scourge which affects many of our women within this country. In your view, what do you feel needs to be done from a legislative perspective to make sure that we're not just combating this pandemic, but we're eliminating it once and for all?
Okay. Well, I mean, this comes at a very critical time. It's Women's Month, and we are not far from the 16 days of against gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. And what we have noticed over time is that you've got these days that are set aside to actually curb this pandemic. But you find the numbers escalating during that time. And then you can ask yourself one thing: why is it that it escalates, especially at that time? And I always say there is power in the words. We need to start really looking at gender-based violence and femicide and really flip it and say, let's come up with words that actually say, what is it that we want to see? How do we want our women to be treated? And that's important. And I think gender-based violence must be treated as a national emergency in our country, not a seasonal topic that happens during the 16 days. We need stronger laws, but more importantly, we need enforcement. You can't just have laws, but you can't have stronger ways of enforcing that. Cases must move faster. There must be bail conditions that are really thought through. And women and policemen must be trained because this is a specialist area. Survivors need to have access to safe housing, they need legal aid, and they definitely need psychosocial support. It's not just a justice issue that we are fighting for in this country as women. It's a budget and it's a policy priority issue.
Nothando, you mentioned about obviously prosecutions, and I think our country's justice system, the country's police is currently not in a good space at this very moment. Of course, we have the commission that is happening into the allegations that were made by Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi. But I had a conversation on Tuesday with the EFF's Paulnita Murray, and she said that when you look at President Cyril Ramaphosa, it's more lip service than anything else. And I just wanted to get, again, the MK Party, which is the official opposition in the National Assembly, is that a view that is shared by you also, that what we're seeing is more lip service, but nothing is being done from the NPA's perspective to speed up prosecutions? I'm going to take two cases, for example. We saw what happened with the Omotoso case, and then, of course, bail, which was granted to Oscar Pistorius. So just your view with regards to that.
No, definitely. We're having serious problems. I mean, what happened with the exposure that was brought forward by General Mkhwanazi is actually a tip of what is the problems that we are encountering in this country. You know, the justice system is compromised. Our courts are not really serving the people, but they are serving politicians. And we need a drastic change in this country so that our women, our children, vulnerable groups can really feel protected because we've got laws that are really applied. I mean, what do you say about a president like ours in this country? President Ramaphosa is just a tool that is used by Western countries to actually maintain a system that has been oppressing us, and especially women, because they are at the worst end and at the receiving end of everything that is going wrong in this country. And we see it with gender-based violence. The vulnerable people are the ones that will be affected. And women, children, people with disabilities are the ones that are at the worst end of receiving the kind of disservice that this country has taken with the appointment of President Ramaphosa after our president, Jacob Zuma, when things were much better in this country. You go and consult with ordinary people in the street and ask them, how is the situation now? And they will tell you, if we could, we would bring back President Jacob Zuma into power so that we can feel the difference that he had made and he can finish the work that he had already started. So we've been failed. The justice system is failing us in this country. The politicians in the GNU has failed us.
Nothando, you, of course, are the national convener of the Women's League. How does a sister body of a main body really act in the interests of women, given, of course, we've got high levels of gender-based violence, and we look at unemployment, women are the most affected when it comes to unemployment, especially young women. So how does an MK Women's League, like the one that you represent, really change the fortunes and the lives of women as we stand right now?
Well, ours is to ensure that we empower women. You know, we actually are working with a number of women in all 9 provinces. And the main objective is to really bring to the front the issues that affect women. So it is to empower them. It's to give them the tools to be able to really curb these things, and also to give them economic means. You know, there's programs that we are putting in place to ensure that women are not only empowered in terms of ensuring that they know how to deal with domestic violence at home, they know how in the streets they can be able to protect themselves, but economically, what is it that we are doing as the leagues to ensure that we support women, we empower women so that they've got their own means of generating revenue, they can participate meaningfully in society, economically in society, so they can sustain their families, and so that they can be able to have their dignity and they're able to claim their space. Those are some of the things that we are doing in the MK Party. The work that is important is actually ensuring that women are at the center, and we want to ensure that when we say in our constitution that at least 40% have got in the leadership position has got to be women. We know that we've got a challenge in our organization, and we're working hard to actually ensure that we achieve that. Not that we achieve the number only, but we ensure that we put the right women at the right places that are going to assist us to gain the 2/3 majority that we need to change the constitution of this country and give back our people their land and their dignity.
Nothando, when we look at other countries, there's a number of them they've had high female political representation. Cuba and Sweden is one of them. But let's look to obviously our continent. You know, in the east of it, we have Rwanda, where there is a high female political representation. Is that a lesson that South Africa needs to learn from?
Well, I think women in Rwanda is a very, very good example. They integrated a system into their country and how it operates. They integrated it into land reform. They put it into education and governance. And post-genocide in Rwanda, women rebuilt the country. You know, the constitution enforced 30% minimum female participation, which they've far exceeded. And the lesson for us is the constitutional quotes work when there is a political will. And I think it's very important that when we put the policies in place, are we putting them in a space where there's a political will for things to change, you know? And the problem at the moment in South Africa is that we have got a GNU in place, GNU in place, that has got no intention whatsoever to serve the interests of the majority. And we need to work really hard when we are getting into elections to actually gain the numbers that we need to be able to change this system so that it doesn't just serve the majority, but it serves South Africa. Rwanda is a great example. And we are looking forward in South Africa to really participate in the next elections as the MK party. We made an impact in the last national elections, and we believe that the next round of elections will put us in a better space so that we can be able to really put our country first and put our women, our children, our people with disabilities at the forefront so that they can lead and not just be followers and observers of what is happening in the country of our birth and in the country of our forefathers.
Nothando, I've got 30 seconds. I just need to get this question in. How close or how far are we in terms of having, or finally having, a female president in our country?
Oh, well, that's a really great question. But I am a positive person. And I think we are actually quite closer than we think. But it must be the right kind of person, you know, not just a woman. It's not about numbers, like I say. It's not about optics, but it must be someone with political clarity. You know, it must be someone that has got the people in their hearts. You know, they must have a vision for our country. They must have a vision for our women. It is not a far-fetched idea. It's not about changing the face, but it's about changing really the power and how the power works. And women leadership must be rooted in the community. You know, communities for us as Africans are quite key. It must be rooted in justice, and it must be rooted in transformation and not patronage. And we are not far from that. A woman president is a great possibility in this country, and she will come from MK Party.
Okay,
Thank you.
We will definitely watch this space. Nothando, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining us on News in Focus on Hilaal TV.
It was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for having us.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Nothando Shozi-Malanga, she's the national convener of the MK Party Women's League. After the break, we continue the conversation. I'm going to be speaking to Baldwin, South Africa's Member of Parliament, its Deputy Leader, Nobuntu Hlazo Webster. Do stay tuned.